Anima-saurus world, and welcome to another interview. Today I am very lucky to have Jamieson with me, who's been animating for, how long is it now you've been in the animation world?
23, 24 years.
23, 24 years. So you've got a wealth of experience for animating, and you've done so many interesting things. So the first thing I kind of wanted to start, 20 odd years ago, what got you into animating?
I didn't know what I wanted to do when I left school, essentially, and so I did computer programming for a little bit at TAFE, and there was this buzzword that was sort of going around TAFE because I was this rare person that was doing programming that could actually draw a little, and so everyone thought it was really amazing for some reason, and there was this buzzword going around which was multimedia, and it was this thing that people were just talking about, and it was really, I don't know, people assumed I was going to get into that. Anyway, about a week or 2 weeks before the course ended, a friend offered me a job at a 2D animation studio, and I kind of just went, screw this, before I got my certificate, and just went and picked up a job as an ink and painter on Crockadoo.
Wow.
That was at Unlimited Energy at the time in Artarmon. So there was no sort of goal in mind for me to get into animation. I just kind of slipped into it. And then when I got into it, because I had a lot of computer experience, which a lot of people actually didn't, I was able to, technically use the software and figure out lots of shortcuts in Photoshop. I think it was 2.5 at the time.
Oh, Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, yep. Oh, so you just sort of fell into it at the start. Yeah, because multimedia, like when I went through the course as well, it was like multimedia course, just kind of touched on everything, and it's just like you sort of found your way through it. But yeah, it sounds like you went through it like 5 years before I went through a multimedia course as well. So that started you off into 2D. So yeah, from that, from those points, 20 odd years ago, did you ever find it hard to find work around Sydney?
Oh yeah, like once that production went on for about 2 years, and then I hung around for a little bit, working on a few little miscellaneous projects, and then they just put everyone off, and then that was it. And there was no other work. There were a couple of other studios, like Disney was around at that point, but getting work at Disney was you had to be really good,
really
better
talented.
than the best thing.
Yeah.
But there was, I don't know, that maybe there were a few opportunities. I had a pretty low self-esteem at the time, so I didn't feel like I was good enough to get any of the jobs.
Yep.
And so a lot of people, like most of the people that worked at the studio, just went off and started cleaning pools and getting jobs in graphic design, and once that production was over. And then what did I do? I worked at David Jones
for a little while. Yep.
Yeah. And got a job in graphic design for a bit as well. And then I actually went back to uni and did design at uni for a bit as well.
Oh, yeah.
And majored in photography. But you know what happened then? Then 2 years into that course, the studio rings up again and says, "Hey, we got a new project up and running. It's the Magic Pudding." And I was like, "Magic Pudding, I'm in." So I left uni and went and worked on the Magic Pudding.
Yeah. Oh, so you never actually got the formal degree because you always landed work while you were studying.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Was that why you actually started going into your own, because I know, you started working for yourself and getting your own work again. Was that sort of something that led you into doing that, or?
Yeah, definitely.
Yep.
Well, sort of. I think I had there was something that I learned when I was at the animation studio was, that thing that I picked up on was all these talented people were just getting shipped off and like just kicked out of the industry because there was no work for them. And there were a few times when we sort of sat down with a group and tried to create some of our own work, like short films or whatever. And I was always really unsuccessful on that side of things for some reason. But I had this drive to want to do it, to try and get people work. And so when when the opportunity came for me to start up my own company, which was with a partner, and he'd already done it before, so there was a bit of, I guess, the confidence was coming from him a little bit at the start, and so the idea of giving people work really brought me a lot of joy. When I first started, paying people was really great. I really enjoyed paying people because allowing people to work in this industry, because it is a great industry, and I've always enjoyed it and always really loved it, and it's something people really strive for. You see uni students and coming up and wanting to get into this industry, and it's almost like people don't get into this industry because it's good pay, or they don't, or it's reliable work. They get into it because they love it, and being able to give that opportunity to someone to actually make money doing what they love really, it sparks a bit of a truth in me. Yes.
Yeah, it's really fulfilling to be able to offer someone something else what they're after, which they to be able to do something. So, because that particular, because you were, to start off with that business, you were sort of angling more towards advertising as well. You picked up a lot of advertising work. Yeah. How did you find then, coming from doing the 2D projects which you'd done, going into advertising, was that like a huge shift for you to sort of balance that out, or understanding how the workflow and that worked, or did it sort of just work?
Yeah, I guess it's a lot more fast paced, I guess. And you're on a production, like a 2D production, you're given one job. Like on Magic Pudding, I was paint checker. So the painters were giving us the work, and we just cycle through them looking for errors and then hand it off over to the compositors. And then after that, I actually got into a bit of flash work at the same studio, flash animation, which was fun.
Yeah.
And so that was going from working in just having one job and then jumping into that flash work where I was more of an every kind of person. So I was working with an animator, and then I was doing all the painting, compositing, and the audio work on there as well. And so I guess I had a bit of experience with whole projects.
Yep.
Because you've got to wear lots of different hats when you go into commercial work like that, like going from series to commercial work. So you're expected to be able to do 3 or 4 different stages.
Yeah. I mean, that's one thing, like, a lot of people don't know how much goes into the back end of a production, like actually getting everything together. Like you said, as a smaller production house, you do have to wear lots of hats. It's not like you can just go in and go, okay, cool, I'm just going to be doing the artwork, or I'm just going to be doing the character work. So being versatile, was that something that you just picked up over time, just being that versatile?
Yeah, like I started as an animator, a character animator. So all the jobs, I'd sort of jump into the production when the character animation started. And with the commercials, that might only be like 2 or 3 weeks. And so I jumped in doing that, and then I'd go home and try and get another job. And so eventually I started trying to I taught myself how to use After Effects, and so that meant I'd hang around for another 2 or 3 weeks after the animation was finished, and it just allowed me to, hold on to contracts for a little bit longer.
Yeah,
a lot of us were really short-paced contracts. Yeah.
So upskilling is one of those things which, working within, what I found working within our industry as well, actually having skills outside of like one particular thing, because I started off as an animator too, and I found that like you, the contracts are always short. So I went the other way. I went starting learning about cameras so I could go to the start of the production in the hope that I could follow it all the way through. Down. Now that's, that hasn't worked because now I've specialized in, previs and pre-production, and I sort of don't get trained around that long except out of that. But yeah, having that broader skill, you can kind of apply it to different things. Well, I found that as well. With your time with inside a small production studio, what was like your fondest memory or the greatest achievement you've done within that particular studio environment? Because I know you won awards and all sorts for for the advertising work that you've done.
Yeah, it's funny. I look up. I've definitely got favorite jobs. One of my most favorite jobs was one that actually pretty much never saw the light of day. It was for Sydney Trains. Yeah, we did these fantastic pieces for Sydney Trains, and there were all these little 15 to 30-second animations on train etiquette and things like that. And we created these wonderful characters, and I directed a couple of them, and I really love them. We worked with some fantastic local writers that were sort of getting into stand up, and we found these fellas, and they were just really fun, and they turned out to be excellent. But then Sydney Trains just never kind of released them. But I think it was really weird. There were two agencies in Sydney Trains, and one of them got us to do something, and another agency got someone else to do something earlier, and then it just ended up the earlier project, which wasn't as good as ours by any stretch, but they ended up using that one for a lot longer than what they anticipated, so our one never actually popped up.
Yeah. Oh, that's sad, because I mean, a lot of with artists, you like to see your work exposed, but there's so many projects that happen, whether they're just personal projects or small projects. I know games are really bad for stuff that just never gets released. There's so much content that never gets released.
Well, that's one thing you have to deal with as an animator as well. I remember being a lead animator on a project and letting animators know that their shot's been cut. And sometimes they get really emotional and defensive about it and really shitty about it. It's understandable, they put a lot of work into it, but it's just kind of it's just what happens. It's it's part of you're a cog in a bigger picture.
And that's really hard if you don't kind of see that bigger picture, and you've actually had your blinders on and you've been focusing so hard on, like, you shot on a sequence or on shots, and you're just like, all of a sudden that's gone. It's just like, but my heart's kind of on that screen. It's like, it can be quite harsh. Another thing which you've done, which is quite unique now, since you've kind of stepped away and you've gone off and started doing your own stuff again, is stop motion. What attracted you back to doing stop motion animation?
I partnered up with, when I lived in Katoomba up in the Blue Mountains, I partnered up with a friend up there who had done a lot of stop motion work. He did kind of animation work on a lot of the 80s kind of stop motion commercials that you would have seen.
Right.
You remember and puppeting stuff, like on the wagon wheels commercials?
Yes. The old ones.
Yeah. And you remember all those? It was sort of a heyday of stop motion in Australia. They had the Smackos commercials and Yo Gorilla stuff, and
I remember Yo Gorilla.
Sunrise, heaps of funky stuff. There was even a really amazing Census stop motion one, where it was all pins. Anyway. We did so much stop motion in the 80s, and we just totally stopped for some reason. Yeah. And so I partnered with this fellow and just thought, there's got to be a market for it. So we started just plugging it on my website, trying to get some stop motion work. And we got a little bit through, and we've had some fun producing those.
Compared to 2D, because you've got quite a background in 2D, how does the production, the production flow for especially the time that it takes to produce stop motion compared to like a 2D animation? Is there a huge difference?
It depends what the project is. I mean, if like there were some jobs we did. One job we did, which was the big monster tentacle-y kind of thing, which maybe you can play it on the screen now. It's a short 15-second piece, but pre-production was about 3 or 4 months, like making the characters and making the sets, because they were so insanely detailed. And I guess it's like when it comes to 2D or 3D animation, you can still have a lot of pre-production, but there can be more with stop motion when you're building sets, whereas some stop motion that we've done where it's just we've been moving fruit around on the table kind of thing, building recipes and things. You know, working with Norman Yeend, he's just, you know, he'll just jump on and just start animating, and I was watching him. You know, you kind of watch him and there's like 30 berries on the table, and he's flicking through the stop motion software and animating each one, and then making a mistake and putting the berries back to where they were, and then animating them again from that frame. And it's just phenomenal to watch. He was so amazing. You could just sort of throw anything at him, and it'll kind of come out looking fantastic. So it was like, for me as a producer and director on most of these projects, it was it's a matter of just having a quick chat to him at the start about character design and whatnot, and then just diving in and putting the animatics together, getting the client approved, and then just throwing it at Norm, like getting a studio to shoot in, and then throwing it at Norm, and he'll just bash it out. And if there's and I'll just sit there, like we did a bunch of ones with like baby food, like all peas and animating mashed pumpkin and pureed apple and stuff around on the table, and I'd just stand there and he'd be animating, and I'd get the next shot prepared and clean all the tables and stuff, and then as soon as he'd finished, I'd whip out the table bench top and then put in another one, and then stand back and let him just go for it again. So
just background, helping him out, actually getting the work done. Cool. Because that's something that, you know, it's an area that, you know, most of the guys I talk to are, you know, are technical artists, and they sit there, they've got their, you know, you've got your head buried in your work, but there's so much that goes into getting a, you know, like directing and producing, so much into just communicating your ideas and setting someone up so that the artists themselves can actually do the work. You know, and it's really hard, especially if you're an artist, not to want to take control of it and say, this is what needs to be done. So that's a skill in itself, being able to go, here's the idea, and just letting someone craft their work. So that's really cool to hear that you can actually watch someone go, there's the stuff that, and they just produce awesome stuff. So it's cool that you can find it.
You know, for me, at least, I can have, like, I know my strengths and I know my weaknesses, and I know when to throw stuff to people that are better than me. And it's usually with the design phase. I'll throw a lot of that stuff to people, and even with the final compositing kind of side of it, like putting that final little, you know, that little 10%.
That last little 10%,
makes it awesome.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's sort of the beginning and the end, really. And you know, if you get those two things right, then you know it's going to look good. If stuff looks good on just a still frame, then it's probably going to look great.
So with that, how do you then, you know, as a producer, how do you then go about finding talent, you know, people that you want to work with? Do you have like a close knit group of people that you've worked with a lot before, who you really trust to build a faith in and throw a target at? Or are you constantly scouring around to try and find someone who fits in a niche for a project? How do you approach finding people?
Yeah, it's I've definitely got the guys and girls that I like to work with the most. Like at the moment, I'm working on a 3D job, and I'm using Blender. And there's a guy that lives down the road who actually got me into using Blender. That's just nails lighting and rendering. And I'll put a shot together, and I'll just throw it to him, and it'll come back rendered, looking perfect,
pretty.
You know, it's perfect. Like, there's. You know how you usually, when I render stuff, you do like 4 passes until you get the right pass, kind of thing. It'll just come back looking perfect, and he charges for it, but I know it's going to come back perfect, and it's no hassle at all. With some other people you work with, because you've got to find new people all the time. Not everyone's available, so some other people. There was one particular project I worked on, and I had 2 animators, and one was pretty new to the industry, and one I'd worked with before, and I knew her capabilities, and I threw her lots of shots, and she animated about half of the project, and another person did some animation, and there was just problems with it all the time. He was new, problems with it all the time, and ended up costing me twice as much money to have him animate on the project and only animate about a fifth of the project, and whereas the other person was cheaper and she animated half of the project.
More. Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's this weird like over the past couple of years, using people that are less, because you always want to find this new talent kind of thing, and it's hard to really know who the talented people are because they haven't really done a lot of the work yet. And some people, you can bring them onto a production and their show reel might not be great, but their work ethic is just amazing and their ability to take notes is amazing. And you don't know if they can do that until you've got them on the production. Whereas, so you can end up, paying. If I can get a contractor in for $2,500 a week, and then I can get another contractor in for $1,000 a week, and it still could be cheaper for me to use the $2,500 a week person.
Yeah, right. Yeah,
because they're going to get all the work and they're going to do it right the first time, and it's going to look awesome. Whereas the other one's taking notes and going back and fixing them up, and it's a headache for me. It's a headache for them, and
yeah, it's a balancing act, actually. Like you said, it's a balancing act trying, you've got to, as a producer, you've got to look at the budget as well as the artistic content that you're getting back, and knowing if what you're getting back, like I said, is not going to have so many iterations in the process. It's a delicate balancing act. So I'm glad that there are people who actually do it. Developing or talking and getting to know each other. We actually started up or developed a community in Sydney, the Sydney Animation Producers Group. That started off really, really well. We got some great people in to talk about it. How do you find the community down in Sydney from that side of production? Because I think the artistic side of it with the DLF group when I was in Sydney was really good. It was a small group, but you always had lots of people together and that. Whereas, producers and directors, they're a different breed of people. How do you find that community down there? I know you're outside of Sydney, but you've got your fingers in there. You've met a lot of people. How do you find that community? Is it a tight community that kind of works well together and bounces ideas off of each other? Or do you find it's like little pockets down there?
Yeah, it's a tricky one. It's definitely pockets. That whole thing was something that I really wanted to try and get into, to produce my own content. And it's still on the cards. I'd still want to do it. But it's kind of just been put on the side for a little bit now. And so I created that group so I could learn how to get it all happening and get it together. And I attempted to try and, create a community that was sort of based around that as well. And I hope it sort of inspired some people to try and get something up and running. But it's a real different mentality. Like it's like going from being you've all heard that rich dad poor dad kind of thing of don't work for money. Entrepreneurs don't work for money.
They make money work for them.
Like they never pull in a wage. An entrepreneur won't ever take a wage, but the entrepreneurs figure out how to make money without pulling in a wage. And that's the sort of the mentality you have to be when it comes to producing your own content, because if you're going to get something up and running, you're going to be spending years on it for no money. And it's a real mind bender for a lot of people that sort of get involved with it, because they're used to getting a wage and getting paid for what they're doing. And hopefully you'll make that money back, but maybe you won't.
Yeah.
So it's like this. I found when I was sort of talking to other studios, and all the studios sort of have their own kind of people that have really mastered it and figured out how to do it, and they all ended up with a lot of kind of money backing them to allow them to produce, to get these projects up and running. And they also don't really they're not really too open to allowing people to come in and pitch stuff to them as well, because once you start pitching, once people start bringing in ideas from outside, they're going to want a cut of, a piece of the pie essentially. And it's not about how good an idea is. It's about how good the people are that are producing the idea.
It's very different approach because especially when you're younger and you think I've got brilliant ideas, I just want to get them out and share them around. You don't it's a lot to learn about how to actually find, like you said, find funding, especially to develop your ideas, or just put in the amount of work that's required to get an idea clear so you can, like you said, pitch it. Like there's not a lot of places you can pitch to, but there are a few places around Australia to pitch ideas to. But yeah, actually getting to that level of pitching an idea clearly and precisely and leaving someone with, here's my idea, it's really hard to do. And like you say,
and people always want to really hold on to their ideas as well and have them their own. And because I've been in the industry for so long and I've been talking about producing my own content for so long, it's I've met lots and lots of people that have had what they believe is the best idea, and then they've never actually done anything with it. And this is this whole thing of people want, they've got their idea, but you need, the idea part is such a minute part of it. The teams that have to get together to actually produce it and get that money, like I was saying before, and holding on to an idea and being real kind of, no, it's mine, I'm not going to let anyone else have it, and I want 50% of the profits, and it's not sort of helping anyway. Nothing's going to get produced that way, and you have to really give up your idea and move on, and then produce another idea. And because ideas, if you allow your ideas to continue to flow, then they're going to continue to flow. But if you get stuck on one idea and holding on to that, then your creativity will just be stuck inside that sort of bubble and won't actually create more stuff.
Oh, well, with that, thank you so much for sharing so much of your knowledge with us, Guy. I really appreciate it. And I know that so many other people who will listen to it will get a lot out of that. So Anima-saurus World, if you've enjoyed time with Guy, definitely check out his website, Poke the Bear. Or if you'd like to help the community around Sydney grow and flourish to produce more stuff, check out the Sydney Animation Producers Facebook group and get involved with that there. So until the next time we're talking to you, we'll all say bye-bye.